So far, there is no date, no venue, and no lineup for Fyre Festival 2, but there is a price tag. The original Fyre Fest was a famous disaster. Its creator went to jail. He is out now. He's selling tickets. Who, I ask you, is buying them? I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Fyre Fest, the biggest festival that never happened.
Nightmare in Paradise. There was no music.
They were put into disaster relief tents.
People started to have breakdowns. People started to have panic attacks. No idea what they were doing.
It was also a health concern that there were people literally trapped on an island.
It was a shit show.
Just chaos and anarchy.
Boy, that's just some of what was said about the Fyre Festival back in 2017. It was initially promoted as this super exclusive luxury music experience festival by models and Instagram influencers. And as you may or may not have heard or gleaned from that little clip you just heard, it was a spectacular failure, leaving thousands of party-goers stranded in the Bahamas and landing its organizer in jail for fraud. But after serving 4 years, Billy McFarland is back with this.
This is a big day because as of right now, Fyre Festival 2 tickets are officially on sale.
Yes, they are, officially as of yesterday. You can now buy tickets to a second version of the Fyre Festival. In theory, anyway. Alyssa Bereznak is a regular here on Commotion. She writes about internet culture, including for The Ringer. Hey, Alyssa.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for being here. It's really kind of hard to sum up why this festival was such an epic fail to begin with. But for anyone who might need a refresher, take me back to 2017 and describe a bit of what happened.
Yeah, so it starts with a budding millennial entrepreneur named Billy McFarland. And he announced this new music festival called Fyre Fest. And it was billed as a luxury Coachella. And this is when Coachella was sort of at its apex of cultural relevance. This festival would be even better. It would be held on an island in the Bahamas that was once owned by Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar. Instead of camping out, people would have these like glamping situations. There would be celebrity chefs making everyone's food, a private yacht ride, dinners with the musical artists. And it was billed as this sort of revolutionary, aspirational cultural event. And it was advertised by really big names like Kendall Jenner and Bella Hadid. I think something like 400 musicians, models, and athletes posted about it online. But, when the guests who bought tickets, who shelled out hundreds, even thousands of dollars to go there, arrived, they saw FEMA tents set up on hard, rocky construction sites. They saw no infrastructure, no musical artists, and there were like rations of food and alcohol. It's every man and woman for themselves. And it was truly the ultimate lesson in Instagram versus reality.
Yeah, the image that's coming to mind as you say rations of food is that infamous picture of the styrofoam container with a single slice of cheese on a wonderbread.
Yeah, I mean, that's seared into my memory, too. It's just like, no, that's not a gourmet meal.
Instagram versus reality, as you said. And this was a massive cultural moment. So what did it do in terms of proving the power of social media influencers?
They were really smart about the marketing because that was kind of all they had in the operation. So I think it all launched with these like bright orange squares in everyone's Instagram feeds. All the famous people posted it at once. And then you clicked on it and you would see this video of all of these models and musicians partying it up in the Bahamas. And people were like, oh, wow, I want that. This was, the age of FOMO. And I suppose FOMO still exists, but it was really peaking with our addiction to social media. So I think it just proved that you can have like influence can be all there is to a product and you can still really sell something.
Yeah, like the product isn't real, but the power of the influence is very, very real.
Very valuable.
Yeah.
And you just have to deliver or everyone will know you're a fraud.
Which begs the question, like, how are people going to fall for it again? But we'll get to that. First, we should emphasize like that there were real victims when this happened in 2017, right? There were the locals who worked for free, and there were people who were stranded without food or water or washrooms, and there were investors who lost piles of money. And there were consequences, too, for Billy McFarland, who you mentioned, the organizer of all this. He served 4 years in jail for fraud, including months in solitary confinement. And he posted this to TikTok yesterday.
It has been the absolute wildest journey to get here, and it really all started during the 7th-month stint in solitary confinement. I wrote out this 50-page plan of how it would take this overall interest and demand in Fyre, and how it would take my ability to bring people from around the world together to make the impossible happen, but how it would find the best partners in the world to allow me to be me while executing Fyre's vision to the highest level.
I mean, what?
It sounds like marketing copy, right? Like it sounds like it's like taken from a marketing 101 textbook. But yeah, I mean, this is not on my 2023 bingo card. Neither was a combo hurricane earthquake in Los Angeles, but we're working through it.
Yeah.
I would say we're living in the age where like ultra famous scammers can sometimes be lionized. And you look at someone like Anna Delvey, for instance. Maybe Billy thought he could catch a second wind like she has. She's sort of become this it girl in New York, or at the very least capitalize on how well known Fyre Fest is. People know it to be a disaster, but they know it. And
exactly.
Media is covering it. So that's free press.
I mean, look at what we're doing right now. Like we talked about this even in booking it. The name is recognizable. It's the reason why we're talking about it, and he is definitely doing something right in terms of getting people's attention. It's also just like hearing that he's the way that he's speaking about being in solitary confinement as sort of like the inception point for the idea of doing this. It's just like it's such a powerful mode of telling your own story,
Yeah, and I think obviously the thing people are attaching to here is the delusion.
Yeah.
Like it's concerning.
It's concerning. Okay, so the reality is there is a site where he is selling tickets now. You check this site out. What did you find?
So I want to say that it's hosted at a URL that's posh.vip, which I just found hilarious. But he's selling the first 100 tickets to the event for $499 each. According to the website's description, that will grant you admission to Fyre Festival 2, which is, quote, targeted for the end of 2024 in the Caribbean. And there's an asterisk there that says the dates are subject to change. So the website says it will also get you so-called VIP access to lead-up Fyre events, which are to be announced. Anyway, it's really scant on details one might be interested in if they were paying $500 for a ticket to a musical festival, like date, location, lineup. And I clicked through to try and buy these tickets just to see what would happen. And it immediately asked for my email and phone number. And that's when I was just like, nah, I'm good.
I checked it this morning and those tickets are sold out. Those first 100 tickets. Sold out.
Are they?
That was my next thought. Like anybody can put sold out on a posh.vip website, I guess. And it looks like the tickets increase in price as more and more of them sell. Like that's the model that's laid out on the website. Anyway, okay. So the headline of the story in Rolling Stone magazine about this is tickets for Fyre Festival 2 are on sale now. If you're interested in lighting money on fire, I have to ask you, Alyssa, who do you think is going to actually buy tickets to this?
So my only real answer to this is that there might be people who are interested in doing this for the bit, or ironically. Like on platforms like TikTok, you get a lot of attention for embracing the absurd. And I would absolutely watch a TikTok of someone who bought a ticket and went on that journey, either to try and go to Fyre Fest or just get their money back or whatever it is. And I would say if enough people watched a TikTok like that, then maybe the $500 investment might be worth it. Mm-hmm. But, if they do end up going, I just got to say pack a lunch.
Pack a lunch, pack some water. And I think the way that this plays out will tell us a lot about what the state of influencer culture is maybe in 2023.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's not so much even influencer culture as just the really meta nature of media, which is that as long as it doesn't matter if you're a fraud, people still might be down to see what you're up to as long as it can earn them attention.
So see you there.
Yeah. Gonna buy my ticket today.
Just kidding. Posh.vip. Okay, thanks, Alyssa.
Thanks.
Alyssa Bereznak is a regular here on Commotion. She writes for The Ringer. I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. You're listening to Commotion. If you look around the landscape of pop music these days, it is dominated by names that have been around for years. You've got Beyonce, you've got Taylor Swift, packing stadiums worldwide, changing the world economy. Kylie Minogue has got a #1 hit. Janet Jackson, Madonna are on hit tours. So where are all the new voices in pop music? And what does success in pop music even look like anymore? This is something that music writers have been wondering, and we have a couple here to talk about it. Shaad D'Souza is a freelance writer based in London, UK, and Suzy Exposito is a culture columnist at the LA Times. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks so
having
much.
Me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Okay, so when it comes to big mega pop stars who are relatively new to the scene, here's someone I think of.
And every girl I ever talked to told me you were bad news. You called them crazy. God, I hate the way I called them crazy too. You're so convincing. How do you lie without flinching?
That's a bit of Olivia Rodrigo with Vampire. According to a Billboard article by Elias Light, label executives consider Olivia to be the most recent pop artist to have a huge break. But that was 2 years ago now that she first broke. So Shaad, first question to you. Why do you think we're not seeing more pop stars having major breakthroughs?
I think it's a lot of things, really. But, on one hand, I think it's kind of inexplicable, except for the idea that maybe audiences are less interested in this kind of like the big kind of like massive, omnipresent pop star, like all those people you mentioned just before, people like Taylor, Beyonce, Miley, they're all kind of, they're kind of relics of an era where it was expected that we had these kind of like demigod-like figures who kind of like presided over the pop landscape. Whereas now I think what you're seeing more and more of is kind of really popular kind of cult artists who speak to kind of like a small kind of segment of the music listening audience. And, that small segment is very devoted. And so, on the charts right now, it's not going to be a Katy Perry song that's #1 for 10 weeks. It's going to be, actually it's a bad example because we've had on the American charts, we've had a Morgan Wallen song #1 for something like 16 weeks or something. But, there's like a lot more turnover and there's a lot more kind of like niche subgenres. There's a lot of kind of like, there's heaps of rap music. Not that that's a niche subgenre, but like there's kind of a lot that people have access to because of streaming. And I think it means that those big pop stars kind of are able to touch less of the population, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Suzy, I'm curious, you've talked to a lot of young pop artists who are trying to make it in the industry and trying to go mainstream. What are they telling you?
To Shaad's point, I think that's absolutely right. They are getting more niche, and they're also coming from more places. Whether it's Latin America or Korea, like it's hard to compete when there are so many more players in the game. That's #1. But 2 is just how spread thin they are. The pop stars of today, they have to arrive at labels already developed, and they're not developed by managers or A&R reps. They're developed by TikTok. They're developed by the internet, and they have to already come with a built-in marketing plan. They have to be funny and charming online as well as on the stage, which, as we know, so many pop artists are getting discovered on the internet, but a lot of them, they show up, they sign a deal with a label, and they've never played live before. They've never played to a crowd. They've never gone on tour.
Some of them have never written their own music before. So it's just it's really skewed today. And a lot of people, their avenue to making it is through the internet, but the internet is not a development strategy.
Nor is it music school.
Yeah.
Like I'm hearing a couple of really, sorry, go ahead, Shaad. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, actually, that's such a good point, Suzy, is that like, I've been thinking about this a lot, is that TikTok is not a substitute for actually building a fan base. I think of like the big TikTok stars who got big in music like a couple of years ago, people like Benny or Ash Nico. They were very quickly signed to major labels, had a couple of big hits each, and then now are kind of nowhere to be found, or their follow-ups are kind of not being talked about. I think that is definitely something. I think there's a lot of investment from major labels in new artists, but no genuine long-term investment in terms of how their careers might develop beyond the first hit.
And
Absolutely.
And for the artists too, no protection in terms of access to the audiences that they're building on TikTok. I was just talking about this yesterday. Like your access to your audience is mediated by a company that makes the rules about how you get to reach them or how you get to engage with them. And that can change at any time, as we see it change all the time. Anyway, okay. So Shaad, you wrote this article in the New York Times about a middle class of pop music that's emerged. And you talked in particular about this artist. I feel badly turning the music down so we can keep talking because we're all like grooving out to it. But that's Run Away With Me by Carly Rae Jepsen. Shaad, how does Carly Rae exemplify what you've referred to in your article as the middle class of pop music?
Yeah, right. So I wrote this essay about this kind of phenomenon that I guess has been percolating over the past decade, really, where there is this kind of like huge grouping of pop musicians who, you know, are popular but are not popular in any of the traditional senses. So that's, you know, they're not really on the charts, they don't play huge shows, but they do have really big fan bases and people talk about them online. And when I was kind of trying to map out this phenomenon and like kind of like find the beginning of it, I really kept coming back to Carly Rae's third album actually, Commotion, which came out in 2013. It was kind of seen as a bit of a flop in the industry, I guess, you know, because she was just coming off the release of Call Me Maybe, which was obviously huge everywhere. And then Commotion, you know, I think it peaked at something like number 16 on the US charts when it was released. And then something kind of interesting happened, which is that these kind of like online fan bases started to kind of like get behind her and say, you know, this is the greatest pop album of all time. This is a masterpiece. You know, she's so underrated, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't a movement in any means, by which I mean it did not get Commotion to the top of the charts. It did not make Carly Rae kind of like a huge stadium sellout success. It just meant that she had this really strong, supportive fan base. And so that to me is like a really archetypal example of this kind of like middle-class pop star phenomenon, you know, where she's got these really rabid fans, but it's not necessarily like a growing contingent in that much of a sense. And it just kind of became this thing where it's like Carly Rae has these really intense fans, but not necessarily like that fandom isn't necessarily like going anywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like she's got this really supportive fan base, as you mentioned, but I think that may not necessarily be growing, but she also seems to have something that people who maybe make it super, super big don't get the license to have, which is an artistic freedom. Like whenever I hear from her, whenever she puts out a new album, it sounds like she's doing exactly what she wants to do. Suzy, I'm curious, what lessons do you think that young artists or the music industry maybe can take away from Carly Rae's staying power?
I'm so glad that Shaad brought up the Commotion era because it was iconic. But I think, you know, one of the things that Carly Rae did so that she was so savvy about was really tapping into the zeitgeist of the moment. I think about the video for Boy Problems and how, you know, she had Petra Collins directed and had like Tavi Gevinson and now Barbie Ferreira, who's done a great job in the show Euphoria. Like these are, at the time, they were like e-girls, you know, they were only popular among like a subsect of young women who were chronically online. But, you know, she tapped into that subculture. She also has been so supportive of the LGBTQ community, which, as we know, has carried so many divas over the years. She's played at multiple Pride festivals. I think she's really leaned into the cult status, and I think that it's smart, it's strategic not to try and go, you know, Beyonce, Taylor Swift in 1 year. I don't think, you know, I mean, these two women, they didn't start in pop either. It's like, you know, Taylor Swift started as a country artist. It took years to build these fan bases. And I think, you know, Carly Rae, she also has so much fun with it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. We've talked mostly about female pop stars up until now, but I'm wanting to know, Shaad, where are the male pop stars fitting into all of this?
I mean, you know, it's kind of interesting, but like historically, I guess since like kind of the early 2000s, there haven't been any huge male pop stars. You've had maybe like one per kind of like few years. You know, you have like Justin Timberlake, or like now you have The Weeknd, or you had Justin Bieber, obviously, but I think in pop, women have always kind of vastly outnumbered men on the performance side, that is. But in this kind of middle class category, I think Troye Sivan is probably one of the clearest examples. And I think there are a few others, but yeah, I think generally, you know, pop is a female dominated landscape.
Suzy?
I do want to interject really quick that we should not sleep on our international male pop stars. Bad Bunny has made such an impressive showing, an unprecedented showing for a Spanish language artist. He has topped the Billboard 200 charts for 3 albums in a row. BTS, everything, I mean, coming out of K-pop, I think K-pop has also made an extraordinary success story in pop music. So I think that one thing that is interesting is that pop in different languages is taking off immensely. And so, you know, maybe that also indicates like a more open-minded pop audience, people who are ready to hear something different. It's just not going to come in English.
Yeah, for sure. I am sorry. I should have been more clear with that. I mean, like, yeah, that's what's really interesting about the charts right now is that, you know, instead of a lot of these kind of like dominant English language pop stars, we are seeing more and more. And, you know, there's also kind of like, you know, people like Rima, like with the song Calm Down, like kind of like the global pop has kind of moved into this position that is far more significant. And I guess the article I wrote, it kind of, not exactly, but it kind of does kind of relate to this idea of like American pop not being the kind of like dominant force that it once was. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely, I love Bad Bunny.
It's all unfolding. It's certainly interesting to watch, and maybe there are more ways to measure pop star success than those Billboard charts too. I mean, we're seeing people carve out their own paths in really interesting ways right now.
So true.
Yeah. Thank you so much both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's a pleasure. Shaad D'Souza is a freelance writer in London, UK. Suzy Exposito is a culture columnist at the LA Times. And they were speaking about why we're not seeing more mega pop stars in the same way that we used to. And that's it for the show. I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in all week with you for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'll see you next time.